Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit Podcast. You got Tanner sitting here.
Corey's here too.
You're really close to me.
I was trying to get in the frame because our guest didn't know how to expand the frame.
He does now. He's living in the moment, kind of like you. Are you ready to do this show?
I am.
Are you
I
focused
need
in?
this show more than people know.
Okay, I like that.
Right?
We got a great guest ahead of us, one that we've been tracking both our direction and his direction for a little bit. Listeners, kind of like you, I'm glad that you are listening to our podcast, especially if this is the first show. I know we say that every once in a while, but truly, thank you. Whoever told you about us or however you discovered us, make sure you tell them thank you, or if it's a social media platform, you spend more time there, because obviously you discovered something great.
Yes. And don't forget, we need you guys to go on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. Leave us a review. Leave us a comment. That's big. It's big for our validity. That helps push our content out there. And we need to get a lot of 5 stars. So that's a really easy way for you guys to, if you guys enjoy our content, to kind of pay us back.
Yeah. You can send us text messages, 515-207-9640. I do like getting those. Been interacting with a couple of you this last week. Really good guest suggestions, and that's what we like to see, because the content right now is going to be just as important as we can. You know, we should really plug this in. Somebody's calling us right now.
Wow. Take a live call.
It is.
Oh,
we
my
should.
gosh.
I don't know if this is. I don't.
Do it. Answer.
I don't even have.
Do it.
Do you have the iPhone jack?
I do.
It's probably like, been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
I didn't get to it fast enough. Shit. Okay. Well,
Text him and see, hey, we're live right now. Do you want to do a call?
We just told our guests today we were going to put our phones down and stop dealing with that. But thank you. That's the type of stuff that makes this show entertaining. But now, the last thing I can say is every advertisement that we put out, go buy their stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I can't say that. No. Thank you.
Support them.
Thank you. That's how our podcast continues to do what we do, upgrading equipment, upgrading content, exposure, and opportunities. So thanks for bearing with us during
Just did a big upgrade of equipment, so we'll see. We actually are running 2 sets of equipment right now to see if we like it better before the old ex-banker here sends it back if he doesn't like it.
That's right. Kept all the receipts. I did. I kept them all. But nonetheless, let's get into our guest today. Excited to have this conversation that should be timely for you as a listener. And probably the best way to consume this content is listening by yourself and sharing it with somebody else. So excited here to have Clint Fischer. Clint, like Clint Eastwood without the Eastwood Fisher. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, gentlemen.
Sorry you had to deal with our long intro.
First and foremost, I need to recognize that Corey's wearing a shirt from Runnings that, I bought, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And, man, those things deteriorate over time.
The old Pearl Snaps?
Tanner,
Harvesting is a moment of truth, and you need a combine that delivers. Meet the John Deere S-Series combines, engineered for the ultimate performance in any crop condition.
With cutting-edge technology, unparalleled efficiency, and maximum grain quality, the S-Series ensures that you get the most out of every acre. Elevate your harvest with precision and reliability that only John Deere can offer.
Contact your local John Deere dealer or visit Deere.com to learn more. John Deere, run with us.
no, I'm wearing Pearl Snaps.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah?
But, and then Tanner's wearing, just showing up professionally. He's ready to rock and roll.
This is actually our shirt. We just had these custom designed. These are farm for profit, labeled, tagged. This is our shirt.
Yeah. Well, I think BrainTrust AG needs to join forces and get in touch with those shirts. But Corey, I'm sorry, but that shirt is just not doing it for me.
What if I do that? Take a little button down.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna reserve judgment for the lack of chest hair that I just saw.
I know it is.
It's
Just a little bit.
pretty baby butt smooth there.
I'm not a very hairy individual.
And and from that point forward, all right, hey, I'm Clint Fischer, and
I got.
yeah, let's talk about my world, which is estate planning, succession planning for farmers and ranchers, and it's just helping build better farm businesses.
So
The podcast is called Farm for Profit,
it is.
which to me is a little bit counterintuitive because if we're not farming for profit, what the heck are we doing out there?
We won't be farming for long. That's what we say.
Well, we won't be farming for long, but however, I do recognize and I help a lot of folks who don't care about the profit side. So young people who have a hobby farm, or I mean, growing up, I grew up on a hobby farm, and the profit didn't matter. But where I'm focused at, where I actually can connect with folks, is how do we make profit, and then how do we build that farm business into something that we can transition to the next generation.
Right.
And so, as an attorney in South Dakota who works with farm families daily, that is primarily my my focus is how do we effectively do that? And obviously, there's tax implications, um, there's family dynamic implications, and so those are the things that I talk about on Twitter or X, sorry, and elsewhere. But yeah, so I'm just really passionate about one, helping farm families transition an operation to the next generation, and then number two, how the heck do we incentivize or inspire non-farm folks to get involved in agriculture and kind of go that route. So
So
yeah, so that's a bit about me. Go
He's an
ahead.
attorney with a sense of humor.
that's hard to find. Kind of like bankers with senses of humor. Just
I know.
not very many of
I
them.
know it doesn't
But
exist.
that's all amazing stuff, and we definitely want to talk about that. But we need to lay the foundation for. I mean, how did you get to this point? What were you like growing up? You said you grew up on a hobby farm. What got you to this point where you want to do this stuff right now?
Yeah, I grew up on a hobby farm, and frankly, folks, I rode the school bus from 10 miles north of where I went to school, all the way to school every day. And we were the first pickup on the route. So I was on that school bus for an hour and a half.
Yep.
And I rode on there, and all of my friends on that school bus were talking about tractors and yields and farming, and I couldn't relate. This is just me being transparent here.
Yeah.
Is I kind of felt like I was missing out on something. I grew up in the country, but not on a production farm. My grandpa was farming while I was going to school, and so to answer your question, it was, man, that is really cool. I really want to do that in the future. How the heck do you get into that world as a freaking grade schooler? And that kind of led to me just being like the misfit, right? So I wasn't really a farm kid. I wasn't really a town kid. And I mean, granted, town kid means 1,000 people were, citizens of our small town in South Dakota. And that has really kind of been weighing on my shoulder since I was a kid. And so fast forward years and years and years and years, I got a degree in egg business. I managed some egg retail locations. So for 10 years, I was kind of in that egg retail space. I owned a fencing company for a while. And one of the things that I saw is that, man, there's a big misconnect from where egg operations are at today versus where the next generation is going to take those over. And that led me to going to law school as a late in life. I was that non-traditional uh, student at law school who everybody just hates because I'm the one who's there to learn. Everybody else is there just to get a degree, right? And so I'm there and I'm asking questions and I'm not the person who says I want more homework, but I'm also not the one who says, yeah, let's not have more homework. Let's get out early because I'm there to learn. So went to law school, uh, got a degree, and here we are. Now I'm an attorney in South Dakota with a primary focus on helping farm families transition their operation. But what does that even look like? What does that mean? And to me, it means we need to take this separate idea of we have an ag operation that is separate from our family dynamics, our um, estate planning, and let's combine those things into a comprehensive transition plan. So that looks like, number one, farm for profit means we're treating this thing as a business. Number two, we're going to incorporate that into whoever's either taking over the operation and then adding on to whoever is maybe not taking over the operation, and just trying to figure out all of those moving pieces. And you got family relationships and drama that all comes into play there. So all of that long backstory to get into like what is BrainTrust AG. BrainTrust AG is something that started a little over a year ago for primarily the purpose of me saying, hey, these are the tools I use daily, and why don't you come and access them? Which within like a week or two, I realized, oh, no, people actually want to connect with other people. They don't just want to access a database of tools. And that's where this peer group idea of BrainTrust AG kind of evolved and came about, so that a farmer in South Dakota could connect with a rancher in Montana or a farmer in North Carolina and understand what works and most importantly what doesn't work in their operation, and apply kind of those principles, those ideas, and share those ideas. The other kind of thing that has evolved out of this is, man, we're kind of isolated and maybe a bit lonely in the ag world. Yeah, we have social media, but do we have true connections through that? And so through BrainTrust AG, we've been able to establish and build up kind of these connections with other people in agriculture who are like-minded, because we're not here for everybody. We're here for those folks who want to understand better how to treat their operation as a farm business or a ranch business or an ag business. We're here to encourage and support young people trying to get involved in agriculture. And then third, we're here to help figure out how the heck do we transition this operation to the next generation. So that's kind of my passions. Obviously, I talked longer than you wanted me to. You tried to
No,
you tried to interrupt me a few times, but yes, I'm an attorney in South Dakota, but I do a lot of other things besides that.
The fun part about your discovery is the same thing we've discovered here on Farm for Profit. We've learned through social media and through listeners that farmers, I don't know if isolated is exactly the word I would use, but definitely don't have the connections with their next door neighbors like their grandparents did with their grandparents as neighbors. But if you can talk with someone like-minded and they're hundreds of miles away from you, you don't feel like you're talking to your competition.
Right.
And you can actually build that relationship on a deeper level.
100%.
Yes. And to that point, Tanner, so I worked in the elevator world for 6 years. And I remember, so, I mean, think about small town South Dakota. There is maybe 50 people in Badger, South Dakota on any given Saturday night because that's when they take the census. And they go to the bar, the one bar in town, and they count heads and say, okay, population of Badger is 50 people because that's how many people are at the bar that night.
Yeah.
And so our elevator was in Badger, South Dakota. And I was in charge of managing the feed department. And I would go in there, and every morning at about 6:30, we would have 10 to 12, maybe 15 people, local farmers, come in for coffee hour. And they would be there from 6:30 until 8 o'clock maybe. And they would talk about all the local gossip, of course. But then they would also talk about some kind of farm stuff. And what I recognized is none of those people were willing to peel back the layers of the onion of their farm business to share with their quote unquote competitors, right? And so I'm looking at this as the local coffee hour in a town of let's be real, 25 people, but and so how does that kind of expand out to the general population? It is every community I've been in, every place that I've sold seed, feed, fertilizer, chemical. I've done a lot of things. They all have their kind of local go-to for whether it's the gas station or the elevator or the coffee shop. That place where farm people meet, but they don't. They're kind of reserved in how they share information.
So as you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'll finish up here. You remove that kind of local competition aspect, and now I've got somebody in Oklahoma sharing exactly all the details to somebody in Kentucky who wants to learn how they bought ground, how they were able to structure their lease agreement from a crop share from a cash rent to a crop share, right? Like these details are so valuable, and that is only facilitated through BrainTrust AG and through that online component. And so that's, to me, really the true value of removing kind of that local competition aspect from the coffee shop, coffee hour, to kind of making it more online. And that's so far what we've been doing. But yeah.
I like
Go ahead,
that.
Tanner.
I like that you led into where my question was going. You started hinting at some of the things that get discussed. So what have you witnessed? What are the most common things that these groups end up chatting about once they get comfortable and develop those relationships?
Yeah, I think that's key, Tanner, is you have to develop that relationship first and foremost. And if we're gonna be, the three of us, if we were to join some kind of a group that has some payment aspect, well, we can already assume that we have a bit in kind of like-minded, a bit in common. And so the first threshold for these discussions is, are we actually talking with folks who are invested in building better ag businesses? And the answer is yes. And so there's automatically a little bit of a trust factor, um, when folks join BrainTrust AG. But then we have ongoing, weekly. Like this last week, we had 3 live events that folks can jump on Zoom calls and discuss things. To answer your question, it is we talk about things that are pertinent to ag business management. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means we're looking at these things as not a lifestyle. We're looking at how are we being more efficient and effective with our equipment. What are some opportunities from a marketing standpoint? How can I sell some ground and 1031 exchange that into ground closer to me? And so it's a wide variety of things. The two things that I tell folks that we don't really talk about are, number one, current markets, because you go on Twitter and you can find that. The other thing we don't talk about is weather and how, shoot, we're in a drought. Okay, that's fine. You can go and be worried about that on other social media platforms. So let's talk about things that we can control, which is how are we managing our operations and how are we transitioning? What are opportunities available to either the next generation or somebody who's trying to figure out how the heck they're going to make a living in agriculture? And so those are kind of the two primary focuses. And, how about that for a generic answer?
I like it because I've always questioned. Look, I've gone to my fair share of coffee shop talk, and I enjoy it. It's a social event, right? It's what it is. It's a morning at the bar instead of a night at the bar. As you get older, that's a little easier to do, type of thing. But if you take the weather and the markets out of it, you've just ruined all of the coffee shop that typically goes on. I love that because I've never understood how they can go there every morning, and it's never an hour. It's always, an hour and a half or 2 or 3, and then they're trying to figure out where they're going to lunch. After
hours.
that.
It's 3 hours.
Yeah.
Minimum.
And
minimum. Yeah.
to me, as a young farmer, I'm 36 years old now, so I don't know if that's young anymore or not, but I could never understand. I got chores to do. I got this. Like, I'm trying to hustle. I could never justify that time.
What's the value? What do they get out of it?
Right.
Right? What is the value of sitting there besides feeling like you have a network of being included? Feeling like there is a group of people like-minded with you.
Community.
Yep. Outside of that, how many times has somebody walked away from those meetings? I will tell you, our partner Dave loves going to those meetings and feels like he gets all kinds of value out of those. But he's got a different perspective. He wants a little piece of information that can pursue and ask more questions outside of coffee.
Because his business can take that gossip and go, I heard this person's thinking about selling ground or wanting to sell this tractor or whatever, and Dave can actually latch on to that. Me as a farmer, maybe I go buy the ground. I don't, but all the other farmers heard that too, I guess. I don't know.
So you did go a little bit generic there, Clint, and that's not what we do for our listeners. We want some free insights. What have been some?
I'll retract everything generic I said.
What's an example of something that has been extremely valuable to your members when they've discovered it in these conversations?
So, yesterday we had what we call a soil gathering, and which is just members getting together talking about some topic. Yesterday's topic was opportunities for first generation and next generation farmers. And so a specific example is a gentleman in Minnesota who he's trying to build up his farming operation, asked the question of, how the heck can I specifically find people to custom graze my row crop farm? So their row crop operation, they've got a lot of corn stalks, and a gentleman from Kentucky said, hey, here's what we do, and specifically described the model, all the points of their contracts, and how they custom graze corn stalks in Kentucky. And then that gentleman in Minnesota said, hey, I also want to do this with sheep. And how can we kind of reframe this thing? And so I sent him some contacts who I know in the sheep world, and the member in Kentucky sent him his spreadsheet of here's how we value custom grazing for fall grazing, for winter grazing on corn stalks. And what it allowed him to do, or hopefully will allow him to do, is to take productive ground, corn stalks, and figure out a way to charge per head per day to graze on that ground. And those are the types of connections. Those are the types of discussions that I like to get into the weeds because I'm this weird blend of, yes, I like the legal side, but I also just like the entrepreneurial side. And so I'm just here looking at things saying, how do we get people looking at ways to insulate us from traditional commodity markets, and how that impacts our businesses. So a specific example that just happened yesterday.
I like that. I think we should graze sheep on your corn stalks.
You might want to upgrade the fence.
Hey.
Well, but that's the thing that we talk about, Tanner, is it's okay. So what are the barriers to making that happen? One is fences. The other thing is water source. And so, I mean, we can get granular about that and say, all right, what's it going to cost? Is it going to cost $2, $2.50 a foot to put up an appropriate fence? What's it going to cost to put up a water tank and to haul water or to find a water source? And are those things going to outweigh the potential income, the cash flow that comes from custom grazing a quarter of corn stalks?
Yeah, we've shared on here before that my dad will custom graze corn stalks, and he's partnered up with a local rodeo outfit. So he's not grazing cattle or grazing sheep; he's grazing broncos. And it's a simple ROI equation, and I shouldn't use simple because sometimes they can be complicated to some folks. Is what did it take to make that fence horse tight, being able to provide water, and then generate that revenue or that partnership or whatever it ends up looking after the fact. I know, Corey, you and I have talked about a lot of this, that when we see something on social media, we typically send it to each other, and it's like, oh, do you see what's happening here? Do you see? But when you do that, you don't have the details.
Right.
You don't get the details. It sounds like when you're able to establish a peer group like this, like you said, you can get extremely granular.
So this peer group is a service that you provide, that you started?
Yeah. So I started it, just about a year ago as kind of a way to share what I do daily from the tools and resources standpoint. And I'm frankly, guys, I'm just figuring this all out as I go.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm I'm kind of the I mean, what do they say? I'm just everything from the bathroom cleaner all the way up to the head chief in charge, and it's not my day job. I don't make a ton of money doing it, but it's a way for me to be actually involved in agriculture and provide a service that I think is valuable to folks. And as soon as it becomes not valuable, I'll just shut it down and I'll just go to being an attorney and and move along with my life. But
it's also nice.
For the time being, it's got some value there, and I'm just figuring it out as I go.
It's also nice to have an outside perspective. Having somebody that isn't a farmer themselves can sit back and put that entrepreneurial hat on to remind some of your participants that this has to make sense. It can't just be, you can do it because it's fun, but you have to understand that you're doing it because it's fun rather than doing something to provide a positive ROI for your operation.
Right. Well, and an attorney knows what his time is worth more than
Yeah.
anybody, so I'm sure it's got to be worth the time, right?
Yeah.
Are you guys good with if I share 2 bits of wisdom that are going to upset 90% of the egg crowd?
Yeah.
That
Nail
would
it.
be Vance Crow's Peter Thiel paradox then, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Number 1, and both of these came from my egg finance officer or egg finance instructor at SDSU. Number 1 is that the vast majority of actual production farmers should just be employees. What does that mean? That means that they should be renting out their ground to somebody who understands the business side of the operation, and they should be collecting a paycheck plus a rent check to somebody else because they are really good at steering a tractor. They are not great at spending time in front of a computer, understanding the break-evens and the budgeting and the P&L and the balance sheet and how are we running this thing from the back end standpoint as a business. And if I say that out on Twitter, people are going to get all worked up and upset because
Well, it's going on Twitter.
It's got to go on Twitter, yeah.
Unlock your equipment's true potential with Steinbauer.
Whether you're looking to boost your power or improve fuel efficiency, Steinbauer has the right performance module to get the job done. Their easy-to-install technology can be a game changer for your operation.
Get more from your machines this harvest season with Steinbauer and start farming smarter today. Visit steinbauer.us now for more details.
Steinbauer, powering the future of farming.
and that's fair. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that the vast majority of people who are a farmer, rancher, egg business owner spend too much time working on the $30 an hour jobs versus the $150 an hour jobs. And what does that mean? That means that, kind of similar to what I just said, is we're looking at marketing, we're looking at what is our insurance policy, and can I shop that around and find somebody who is going to be more cost effective and more efficient from a cost saving standpoint? What is my marketing plan? What is my cost of production? What are my inputs at? And can I shop that around? And those things all are in front of a computer screen with a spreadsheet and a phone in your hand. And man, that is different than a lot of people who think that farming is greasing a piece of equipment or fixing fence or changing the oil in their Ranger. And I think that those two kind of concepts, and this is, again, I was an undergrad 20 years ago, but those things still apply today. And I find those 2 pieces of wisdom applicable, but it offends people. And why does that offend people? Because we're treating egg operations as lifestyles versus businesses. Which, to tie that back into my day job as somebody who works with farm families through that transition process, I look at, all right, which operations have been most successful? Number 1 and first and foremost is the ones who have treated their operation honestly as a business versus tying in all of their lifestyle considerations. And so there's that separation between here's our family, we own land. We own a farming operation. We have business management policies and procedures in place. We meet monthly, quarterly, annually to talk about the farm business, but that isn't what I eat, breathe, and sleep every day as a family person. Those operations are the ones that transition the best because we're looking at things a little bit more objectively versus trying to recognize how does land transition, how does the equipment transition, how are we going to be able to support on farm and off farm kids, and it is much clearer and much more well defined when we have a separate operation versus those who don't. That's why I'm kind of tying all these pieces together, and that's what we try to do with BrainTrust Ag is recognize. Let's treat number one. Let's build an attractive ag business. Number two, let's transition this thing in a reasonable way to keep all the stakeholders, involved. Um, yeah. So.
Have you been able to successfully navigate some farms from that mentality to the business mentality? Because it seems like we always talk about it, but man, it's so hard because farming is a great life. Like it, and you live there, you take it in every day. I get why it is that attraction.
Well, and you get an instant gratification if your hands are dirty. You get an instant gratification if you just laid down a field of hay. You get instant gratification when you knock out an 80 of harvesting corn.
Yep.
You get that, and then our culture also makes fun of those that don't get their hands dirty and truly are a farm manager and haven't operated a piece of machinery. Because we've been around those conversations to where, well, why are salesmen even talking to you because you never run that tractor? You know, you never. Well, they need to talk to you because you're the one that is independently thinking about the value that this piece of equipment is going to bring to the farm, not necessarily if it's got the massaging seat in it and all the creature comforts.
Yeah.
So sorry, I interrupted his question.
It's just tough. I mean, yeah. Have you successfully been able to transition the mindset to that?
So the answer is yes and no. Typical attorney answer, right? Just for the listeners, the default answer for an attorney is it depends.
And accountants and bankers.
And accountants and bankers and anybody in professional services world. But what I've seen, to answer your question directly, Corey, is yes. However, it took buy-in from both the owner generation and the successor generation. Okay. And I think that is really where we can make that change happen is if I can convince the owner generation who are in their 50s or 60s that you're not going to be doing this forever. You're not going to be 90 years old and still making all the decisions. If you can transition the management duties early enough, then yes, it is feasible and doable, and we can make that thing happen. And so it takes, like I said, buy-in on both the owner generation. The successor generation needs to approach it in a way that is not, I'm entitled to this. I don't have my hand out, but I have skills and knowledge and am willing to work my tail off to make this transition happen. And so if we can transition the management side of things before any ownership, before any estate planning or ownership transition happens, if we can make that happen, then yes, we can go from this is a lifestyle that I inherited from my folks to this is being treated as a business. We're actually having business management meetings. We're actually separating these things away from the family drama. That's where I've seen that actually happen, Corey, is when we have buy-in from both generations.
Right. I mean, because there's no question that there's a lot of successful farms that are thinking the way of the lifestyle that have been done really well, right? Or maybe mix some of the business in, because otherwise they wouldn't be where they're at today, right?
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So I think that's where
and
people
this is
see
this
that.
is no knock. This is no knock on what has happened from the 1880s to the 2000s. This is just, we're concerned right now about the economic future of our operations. And, there's this general consensus out there that we don't want corporate farms. Okay. How do we preserve a family farm legacy? Number one, you build something that's somewhat profitable to bring in that next generation. And number two is you have a good plan, a written plan to transition it. It's not that complex, but both of those two things are key and paramount to us preserving family farm operations.
Right. And the one thing about corporate farms, the reason why there are corporate farms, I mean, because no one likes that mentality, is they're doing what you're doing. They're running it like a business, right?
They're still family owned.
Yeah. So we need to adapt and change our mindset to that.
And Clint, we've said from the beginning, right? Farm for Profit was created to help farmers achieve higher levels of profitability. Why? Because profitable businesses are the ones that can expand, grow, thrive, and survive. They can take downturns like this, and they don't complain about low commodity prices because they've already got a plan in place. And I know that it is extremely painful right now, but this is why our listeners need us now more than anything. I don't know why, but I feel like in the last 30 days, and obviously we're recording this a little bit before it's actually going to come out, I would say the middle of 2024, that switch flipped even harder. That breaker went down for Farm for Profit and said, these messages are going to be extremely critical over the next 6 months. And talking to you is a part of that mission to make sure that our listeners don't freak out. I was talking to somebody this morning that said her husband is losing sleep because he just doesn't know how he's going to survive this. We don't want our listeners to be in a position to where they feel the same way. And I know that's a lot. That's hot air coming out of my mouth, right? I don't have a farm that I own. My wife and I own a third of a group of pigs every single turn. That is the amount of the ownership that I have. But we very closely network. Dave,
You're involved in a lot
Corey.
of the daily decisions.
Absolutely. That's the point of when we have these conversations. We talked about building that advisory team. One of the first episodes we ever did, and maybe we need to do it again because our quality of work is much better now than it was in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
That advisory team is who you can rely upon to answer the questions. Just like the peer groups that you're putting together, you now have somebody that you can trust to go about providing you advice, whether you take it or not, giving you that perspective. But I want to know, something that you said during that comment section is transferring management before transitioning wealth. How have your clients successfully left a management role as the older generation? Because it seems like our listeners struggle sometimes to get dad or grandpa to let things go.
Yeah. No, and that's a great question. Number one is willingness. And that's not something that your attorney or your banker or your accountant can provide. It is a personal character trait of having that willingness to say, number one, we're recognizing that Junior is capable, has the skill set, has the ability to take over some management duties. And then number two, it's that, like, how the heck do you just give up control? And that's just human nature, is we want control. And so in order to give up control, to me, it is showing for that next generation to show their aptitude, their skill set, their ability to take over the operation and kind of keep things status quo, but also what are they bringing to the table? Are they bringing some other type of skills and ability or connections, relationships to the farming operation so that the owner generation says, okay, this thing is in good hands. All right. And that is primary. And there's there's this idea out there, which I buy into, of kind of the life cycle of a family farming ranching operation. And number one is you start as a laborer, then you slowly transition into a manager, and then you transition into a leader, and then finally, at the end of that cycle, is we transition into an owner. So what does that mean? That means that we need to develop the skills to be a good employee. Then we need to develop the skills to be a good manager. Then we need to develop the skills to be a good leader. And then finally, we can actually be a capital allocator, which is what an owner is. And so if we're bringing on kids just because of their last name and not because they've professed any of those skills, I think we're doing more harm than good into our operations. And so that's the way I look at it. Now, you mentioned something, Tanner, about these ideas of, man, it's kind of bleak out there. And the importance of a peer group, the importance of people who you trust and who you can relate to. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about this. So a couple weeks ago, with BrainTrust AG, we had every Wednesday morning we do what's called a sunrise sessions, and it's from 6:30 until 7 Central Time every Wednesday morning. And we talk about some Bible study stuff. We talk about leadership things. Just kind of talk about like where are we at, checking in as men and women in agriculture from a personal standpoint, not the business side, not the legal side. And I was on vacation with my family, actually down in Iowa, and I didn't prepare anything for that Wednesday morning. So 6:30 comes around, and so I show up sitting on the dock of this lake, and I just joined the Zoom call on my phone, and I tell people like, hey, I didn't prepare anything. I'm supposed to be the leader here. Let's just open this thing up for discussion. One of the gentlemen, almost immediately, who has been involved for the last 7-8 weeks, said, hey, I woke up last night about midnight. I woke up my wife and I said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. That's pretty heavy stuff. And do you mean farming? Do you mean life in general? How can we help you? How can we support you as a group? And mind you, there was 13, 14 people on this call. And he said, the numbers aren't looking good. He says, I just didn't know what the heck to do. I needed to get on this call this morning to hear from other people who have similar issues, similar concerns, but also who are there to have a support network, a support system. And so we talked through that. And as a group, there were people who were contributing to that. And okay, fast forward 2 hours after this, this group call happened, and I got an email from somebody who has been on every single one of our Zoom calls, but has never turned on his camera, has never said a word in any of our gatherings. And he emailed me and he said, "Hey, that was exactly what I needed to hear this morning. I'm so thankful I was part of that group this morning. I know that you didn't prepare anything in advance, and I was going down a very dark path. So thank you." And it's like, oh, those things just kind of hit you, right?
Right.
And so we spend this podcast talking about farm business and transitions, and what are we doing as an industry to facilitate some of these things. Honestly, a lot of what BrainTrust AG ultimately is let's talk about things that matter with trusted people who are there to support you, not chastise you.
Right.
So anyway, I wanted to share that, Tanner, since you had mentioned, some of those other issues that are plaguing agriculture today.
I think it's a good point, a good topic to bring up, because at the end of the day, I mean, your life is worth way more than any farm operation, right? Like if the numbers don't work and you're not, and your farm's going to go down, like life goes on. There's other things in life to do. So just having that peer group, someone to talk to, is bigger than any financial decision or transition or any topic that you're talking about, right?
Marriages, family, businesses, it's all bigger than you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I recognize that I just threw a wet blanket on our discussion.
No.
Bringing that up, but the reason I bring that up is just the importance of it. It's something where, we can have disagreements on, are we going to be no-till, strip-till, conventional till? Are we going to have disagreements on, do we cover crop? Do we not? Are we raising our cattle in a confinement setting? Are we, grass-fed beef? Things like that. But at the end of the day, aren't we all in this thing together?
Right. Should be.
As agriculture, let's support all of the various ways that folks can get involved in agriculture. And man, I think that's really something that we ought to drive home a little bit more than maybe we do. And part of that is, generally speaking, let's support each other. Yes, from a mental health, mental fitness standpoint, and just let's support everybody involved who wants to either get into agriculture, who wants to expand their operation, and who also wants to transition out. And that's what we're ultimately trying to do.
I think that this is ultimately a make a choice situation, because we've done motivational episodes. We pull TikTok clips and we get fired up, and typically we put those types of shows out right after a holiday because we know holidays can be tough. We also know that holidays are tough for us to schedule interviews around, so it works both ways. But ultimately right now, there's a choice that our listeners get to make, because we've got vices. People are going to get into the booze more. People are going to find those methods that are going to take their attention away from something that is painful. They're going to do something to ease their pain. We know that divorce rates are going to go up. We also know, unfortunately, that farmer suicides, which is already a high number, are going to go up when economy and farm times get more difficult. But we can consciously make a choice. It may not be the right choice. We may not be going down the right path, but we can make a choice to do something. We can grow in our knowledge. We can grow in our understanding of businesses. We can grow in our network of people that can support us or build our advisory team. We can grow in the number of Farm for Profit podcast episodes that you listen to help our ratings. Got sidetracked. I had to try a little humor in the middle of a very serious point that we have a choice. Are you as a person going to grow, or are you not?
Yeah.
I found myself earlier this week. You mentioned that it was like a light switch. Like, we just went from profitability to not, even though it's just been a slow death all summer long in the markets, which we can't talk about, right?
Yep.
But just had the realization this week. It's like you start really looking into 2025 crop, and you start pricing inputs. It's like we're not even close to breaking even, and just started feeling pretty down on myself. And I do a lot of other things off the farm to make the farm work. Like I feel like I'm better insulated than that from other people. But then I got to talking to my dad and brother, and it's like, these downtimes I think we look at them wrong. Like, this is the opportunity, right? Like, if we are good managers and make the right decisions in the good times, like, everyone can go buy the new tractor and go, maybe take a stab at ground and pay higher cash rent and, try to expand when times are good. But when times are bad, that's when, the cream should rise to the top. I think it's an opportunity. And every decision I've made when the times are bad, and I haven't been in farming, I've been farming full-time for 12 years. But we've had a couple down times, and it seems like always the decisions I've made when times are down have always it hurt the most then, but it has turned into some of my best decisions that I've made. So there's opportunity.
To that point, Corey, people love him or hate him or have just no opinion on Dave Ramsey. One of the things that I respect about him is that he owns a lot of real estate with cash. Okay. And so in 2008, obviously we had the great, financial issue, but also, it really impacted the real estate world. And he said, this is a time for me to buy real estate at a bargain on discount. And because he was sitting on piles of cash and, he didn't have those issues. And so and this was a couple of years ago, I looked into it. He bought something like $10-15 million worth of real estate, income producing real estate, in that, right after that 2008 crisis, that is now worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. And to your point, Corey, is this an opportunity for those good managers? If so, then let's capitalize on it. If you're not in that situation to take advantage of this as potentially an opportunity, what are you going to do from an operational standpoint to put yourself in that position going forward to capitalize on the next opportunity?
Right.
And I think those are the messages that we ought to be sending.
And I would say, even if you're not in the position or don't feel like you're in the position, like, one good decision, like if you could just put all your eggs into one basket, even if you don't have that many eggs, right? Like, one good decision, if you wait for that right opportunity, could just pay dividends down the road, as long as it's a sound decision. Mm-hmm. If you were a good manager, maybe you could do 10 of those,
Oh, right.
But if you only could do one,
yeah,
type of deal, it might hurt for a while, but it's time to get our hands dirty and put some work in, I guess.
I go back to some of the advice I got when my wife and I were going through birthing classes a long time ago. We did. We went. Really? Me? You think I would not
yeah,
go?
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
You probably got the breathing down and everything.
I went. Never needed any of it. But they said you will never be ready for a baby. Whatever preparation you can have, you are never going to be ready. You think you are at an income level to where you can support your child, and you never expect how much that child's going to cost. You will never be at a fully ready position before this child comes, but you will figure it out. It's going to be painful because you're going to not know why the baby's crying. You're going to not know why formula is so expensive. You're going to have opportunities during that time period that is just like where we're sitting in the ag economy right now. If you make that decision and you go at it 100% with your gumption, it may hurt, but you stick with it and you figure it out.
Agreed.
So, Clint, as far as this episode goes, we've covered a lot of things. I'm going to try and do my best to summarize it. But I want you to be thinking about the payoff question that we've been asking our guests for this time period. How have you been juggling work and personal life. So think about that as I kind of go through the topic that we had today. We had Clint Fischer here. Just sounds like it's spelled. There's no worry about that. Clint without the Eastwood. Fischer.
Well, I don't know. There is a C in there.
Fisker.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we already got corrected. We
Yeah.
can't say that. But he's CEO of BrainTrust AG. He's an attorney from Brookings, South Dakota, and we talked a lot about how he's taken his professional understanding from the legal side and his desire to learn and provide more input to the ag side to put a comprehensive approach into a peer group that can bring value from across the country. Right now, I think in my notes here, you've got members from 34 or more states that are participating on doing this. We're helping battle the feeling of isolation. We're focusing in these peer group conversations on ag business management, not the things that we can't control like the weather and the markets. You're coming at these discussions from an entrepreneurial mindset to be able to help your participants grow, to be able to grow in either knowledge or business size or whichever it is. I thought it was neat how you put the life cycle of a farm employee or family member on a farm, and to complete that cycle, you said you started as a laborer, you go into a manager, you become a leader, you become an owner, and then I would say that hopefully you're still physically able to then, after being an owner, become a laborer again as you transition it to the next generation. So that was a really interesting thing that I had put down. We talked about how you've identified some of your successful operations transitioning the management ability, the ability to give up control. And it starts with willingness, and it also you have to show that there's a desire to take over. So if you have willingness to give up control and someone who's willing to take over control, then you have to demonstrate your capacity, your responsibility, your skill level, and be trained for that next step in that farming life cycle. But ultimately, the farms that transition the best that Clint has noticed is there's buy-in from all sides and all generations. They've successfully transitioned management before they transition wealth. And those farms that run it more like a business and have a written plan transition better than the others. So those are the key takeaways that I had from today, Clint.
Love it, Tanner. Great summary. And here's my answer to your question. I'm not great at separating or carving off time from business endeavors to non-business endeavors. But what I will say is it is crucial, and it is something I'm trying to get better at. And I think it is so important for, especially in the agricultural world, whether you're a farmer or a rancher or an egg business owner, and you have all of these irons in the fire, to unplug and to focus on family. And me personally, trying to focus more on faith and trying to understand there is more out there in this life that we have than just our farming operation. And so how do I unplug? I have hobbies. I also have 3 daughters with a son on the way coming in October.
Congrats.
So a lot of my unplugging is hanging out with them, and I love them, and they're awesome, and I enjoy spending time with them and my wife. And so let's prioritize family, let's prioritize faith, let's prioritize mental health, and then the rest will kind of come along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
That's great.
I think we do need more hobbies as farmers. You know, we've gotten a lot of people say we just go to the lake all summer, you know, which is a hobby, I guess, could be if you do that. But like I saw both in my grandpa and probably my dad, who's getting ready to step back a little bit, their hobby was farming, right? That was their lifestyle. And it's a great hobby, but my dad had a lot hobbies, and I feel like they've gone away. I mean, I remember I used to go to bowling league and golf league and
Basketball.
whole basketball and go to sports games, and like it just seems like it's fallen off, but it's just farming now. And I think we need to keep up with those hobbies. Give us something to do, look forward to that's off the farm. Get out of that mindset for when the times are bad like this. We need that time to just go unplug and not think about it for a while, even if it's an hour a day type of deal. So
Yeah.
I do want to ask though. Nice catch.
Only people watching on YouTube will see that.
We found you on Twitter. How long have you been on Twitter or X?
It's probably been about 18 months.
18 months.
That's it?
Yeah. He's a baby on Twitter, but he has 12,000 followers. So what is the secret? What have you done that you found successful to grow those followers and get the engagement that you have?
Yeah, it's not trying to be engaging, chasing the algorithm. I talk about things that are near and dear to egg people's everyday's hearts. And I guess to answer your question is, I try to explain, here's a real life scenario, here's a story of somebody who I'm working with. How does that apply to your life? Because personally, I learn the best from stories. I expect other people do as well. Therefore, I'm going to present stories of, here's a situation, what do you guys think? I'm not here to pass judgment, or I'm not here to dictate one way or another what is right or wrong, but I want people to think about these ideas of succession planning and transition planning and farm business management. That's been my approach. It's probably not something that you would Google and find blog posts about, or
Right.
Things of that nature. But that's been my approach, is just trying to relay stories, real life stories, and how do you interpret those?
It's been fantastic. I love the scenarios. I think that's some of the stuff that Tanner and I send back and forth. We'll kind of talk amongst ourselves or interact with you, because everyone's got a little bit different deal. And then the other one I really like, I've seen you put opportunities up for other farmers that, hey, we got someone that doesn't have a successor here. And that's amazing, because there's just not enough of that for the young people that want to get involved, or maybe don't, their farm is getting swallowed up by a town or doesn't have the opportunity. Like, there's other opportunities out there. No one knows about them.
There are, and that goes to the point of, hey, let's think outside the box a little bit, which is what we talk about a lot within BrainTrust AG. But I throw those things out there to say, hey, let's inspire that next generation. Let's not just be all Debbie Downers about this thing and saying that, oh, you can't get into agriculture because you don't have $16 million worth of capital to go buy 2 quarters of ground. And let's inspire all of these opportunities that do exist. And in my world, working through farm transitions, a lot of it is, there's a generation right now that we're kind of facing, who don't necessarily have a successor to take over. Number one. Number two is, they also don't want to sell out to the next door neighbor who's the big time operator. But they also don't realize that there's an opportunity to bring on a third party, non-relative successor to take over their operation. And so how do we promote that more is also one of kind of my focal points.
Love that.
That's good.
That. Well, yeah, definitely. How do people get in touch with you? How do they follow you on X? And what's your website?
Yeah. On X, I'm Clint W. Fischer, and BrainTrustAg.com.
Pretty easy.
My email's on there. Yeah, just my DMs are open. Just reach out. I try to respond as much as possible. Um, and then I guess number one, first and foremost, is like, let's support farm for profit and what you guys are doing, because it is huge. It is so important, the message that you guys are sharing with everybody in agriculture. And yeah, kudos to you.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. Listeners, we appreciate you. We appreciate the guests that you send us, like Clint. And we appreciate having guests like him provide value for you to take in and put into your operation. So, what do you say?
Share this with some of your friends. I think it's got some very important information. I think we got a lot more that we can cover in another show going forward. So I'm guessing Clint won't be a ghost to the show. I'm guessing he'll be back. So, yeah, I say let's have a good harvest, safe harvest, and remember, you're important. So you're much more important than any business operation. So let's keep that going, and just keep call your friends.
I like it. And until next time, have a good one.